And we are live. Howdy, y'all. This is Kyle Whittington, and I am joined here by Kate. I met Kate on Matt Frad's Locals, and it's really amazing. So if you're on there, you know kind of a little bit of her story because you're probably one of the most active members on there. Like every time you post something, I actually get a notification from it because I was following your story as it was going. So I'm super excited to have you on and to get to hear your story, I guess, semi face to face. So Kate, thanks for coming on. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, like where you're from, what your faith background is?
Great. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to do this. I will be sharing more of my conversion story with my parish soon, so this is good practice. My name is actually Katery Scott. There's several pronunciations of Katery, Kateri, etc. I go by Katery, but I go by Kate now because it's just so much easier. I live in upstate New York. And new to the Catholic Church, sort of. I guess that's called a revert.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So that's really interesting. So I know whenever we hear Kateri, we think Kateri. So my mind first goes to like Saint Kateri Tekakwitha. Is there any connection there?
Yes. I live only about a 20-minute drive from her shrine. So I'm pretty close to where she grew up and lived until she moved to Canada. So yeah, I was obviously born and baptized Catholic, and that's the name my mom chose me. So
okay.
Yeah, so I've been to her shrine and
okay, well that's pretty cool. Okay, I see in the live chat everybody's talking about like how I redecorated. I just gotta say, y'all, after lots of hard work, dedication, and sacrifice, I was finally able to get a green screen. So yeah, here we go. All right. Yeah. So anyway, okay. So you were actually baptized Catholic as a baby. So how did that journey, I guess, out of the church happen? Like, can you walk us through that?
I know very little because I was only about 4 years old when we actually left the Catholic Church. So sharing the story is just hearsay from family. I do know that this was during the early 80s when the church was in a lot of upheaval and there was a lot of poor catechesis going on. I know in my diocese there was a questionable bishop. The priesthood was dealing with some issues. So, and it was also the era of the Holy Rollers and the evangelical movement. So, basically, my mother started reading the Bible for herself. And this was in the era too of, Catholics don't read their Bibles kind of stuff. So she was reading the Bible. She had some questions. She brought them to the priest. The priest didn't give her answers that she thought were valid. So she started going to an evangelical church and became what you would call a born-again Christian. And we were raised in the Assemblies of God Church here in upstate New York.
Okay, gotcha. So I guess putting this on a timeline, this is like pre-Scott Hahn's conversion. So it's not like you could go to like the guy that I would point to. It was like, hey, I'm investigating Catholicism. I'd just throw a Scott Hahn book at him. But that was not an option because like he was still a Protestant at that time. Yes. And but I guess part of that scenario environment is one of those that it's kind of understandable like why someone would leave the church on that, because it was kind of a rough situation, kind of a sorry situation. Like you said your mom like took some questions to the priest and he didn't have answers. So yeah, that's incredibly sad to hear. Okay, so your family grew up going to an evangelical church. You said with the Holy Rollers. What? I've never heard that before. What is that?
Is people very excited and on fire for the gospel in the evangelical sense. The Assemblies of God Church is on the Pentecostal line.
Okay.
So it's very charismatic. There's the gifts of the Holy Spirit, the speaking in tongues. So it's very energetic, very emotional, very Holy Spirit oriented.
I actually grew up, or at least before my grandmother passed away, we went to I kind of grew up Pentecostal. Although we weren't Assemblies of God, if I'm remembering correctly, we were actually Oneness Pentecostal. So like arguably
So,
not even Christian because they
yeah.
denied the
No,
Trinity.
yeah, the
The
Assemblies of God believes in the Trinity. Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
So I guess I went to the heretical Pentecostal church and you
Mhm.
went to the Orthodox one. Okay.
Mhm.
So um so okay, cool. So now so that's how you grew up. Now would you say that like your faith like took like a like front and center part of your life, or was that just something that like you just did on Sundays?
No, my family's faith and my faith was very much front and center. It was very much part of our culture as a family. Most of my extended family on my mother's side also left the Catholic Church, and we all
Mm,
were attending the Assemblies of God Church together. So it was all within the family. For me personally, it was very much on the forefront. I was part of the Assemblies of God has a program for girls called Missionettes, which is kind of like a Christian version of Girl Scouts. I was part of that.
hmm.
I was part of Junior Bible Quiz. I was part of the Children's Church caregiving. So we were very involved, and eventually, my oldest brother is actually an Assemblies of God pastor. So
Okay.
yeah, it was very
Okay.
much a part of our lives.
Okay, that's cool. Okay, so it's not like, nobody could really accuse you of like it's like, "Oh, you never took this seriously," or whatever.
Mhm,
Because like for me, like after my grandmother had passed away, like I kind of took my faith seriously, but I didn't know what to do with it.
mhm.
And so like for me, whenever I tell my conversion stories, it's just like, "Wow, you were kind of an idiot." And I would just I can't help but yeah, it's like, "Yeah, I kind of was."
Yeah.
But but that was that. Now, did you ever have like a rebellious like teenage phase where you uh dabbled with like agnosticism, atheism, or anything like that?
No, actually, I considered becoming Mennonite or Amish for a while.
Oh, okay. It's like the opposite of
So I
rebellion.
was the opposite of rebellion. I mean, after that, that was about when I was about 17, 18 years old. But
Mm,
then after that, I always stayed with the Assemblies of God Church. But my faith did kind of take a bit of a back burner in my late teens, early 20s. And that was around the time I met my husband. And so, that's a very exciting time in a woman's life. So
oh
um,
yeah, yeah.
so that became more of the focus than church, but I still attended church and I still intended to be a
Hmm.
Christian.
Okay, yeah. No, and I think we can all kind of like identify with that a little bit for like, you going through the faith, whatever. Because I know like whenever I was early 20s, like I was active duty Air Force.
Mm,
And, anybody who's ever served in the military, that like religion is kind of like it's that thing that like you kind of need to be ashamed of.
mm,
Like you're not really allowed to be like verbose about it. You kind of need to keep that to yourself. And then like even if somebody asks you, like you should probably deny it.
mm,
Yeah. So like for a little bit, like I tried to strike that balance and failed miserably. So no, I get that like early 20s. Kind of taking a little bit of a back seat. So, okay, but you said this is the time that you met your husband. I guess do you mind telling that story of like how you two guys ended up married?
okay. So I'm really into history, which helps with my conversion, obviously. But we live in upstate New York. It's very heavily history focused. We have, the Battle of Saratoga. We have Fort
Mhm.
Ticonderoga. Nearby me is Johnson Hall, the only baronial mansion in the United States. Um, and we had a lot of historical reenactments. So, like the Revolutionary War, the French and Indian War, the people would dress up and reenact. And
Mhm.
I loved that. So, I wanted to join. And it was at Johnson Hall. And I go there to join, and I see this kilted Scotsman. And so I'm kind of like, okay. But then we met again at Fort Ticonderoga. I went up with my dad, and that's when he started to flirt. And
Okay.
we meet again at Johnson Hall at another date. And I tell my dad, I think I'm going to join this group. This sounds like a lot of fun. So I joined, and the day I joined, he showed up at the the quartermaster's house. Each group usually has a quartermaster that signs people up, and he asked me out on a date, and we had been together almost every day since during our
Nice.
courtship, and so
Oh,
we were together for a year, and got engaged, and within 8 months we were married, and we've been married for 21 years now.
wow, congratulations.
Yeah.
That is like every time I hear that, I just think to myself like that is a long time to not strangle someone in their sleep. Uh
I think we've come close a couple of times, but
yeah, it's like I don't know. Occasionally, sometimes like I'll do something really stupid and I'll be like the next morning, just like wake up and thank my wife for not killing me in my sleep. But but okay, so that's really cool. Now, during all this time, was Catholicism a topic that like ever came up, or did you have any like opinions on it, or like I guess what was your relationship with Catholicism during this time?
well, I'll start young. When I was young, like I don't really remember the Catholic Church from before we left it.
Hmm.
But I remember seeing photographs of my older brother's first communion confirmation and seeing
Mm,
the little girls in the background with their white dresses and their veils. And I would wonder why I didn't get to do that.
mm,
And it was the same answer. You'd get the pat answer of, well, Catholicism is wrong, and we're not Catholic anymore. We don't do that. You don't have to do that. Um, but just I recognized a beauty to the aesthetic, and I longed for it, and I didn't really understand, but I put it on the back burner because I was told Catholicism was wrong.
mm,
So, but I would watch movies, The Sound of Music, Going My Way, and those other Catholic movies, and
mm,
I really enjoyed them, and I really wondered why church wasn't like that for us. And again, Catholicism is wrong. So I would just move on.
mm,
Um, but I told you how in my late teens I was considering becoming Amish or Mennonite. And looking back, I realized I've always had, and then, doing the historical reenacting, I've always had a
mm,
longing for the historical and the traditional. And I was always looking for that. And that was part of my Christian journey was
mm,
um, seeking God in the history, in the tradition, and hoping that that would bring me the joy and the peace and the happiness that was promised to me in my modern Pentecostal church, the Assemblies of God church,
mm,
and that I never found there. So um, I know the church that I went to in my late teen years, the Assemblies of God church, was an old 18th century church, and I loved it there, and I felt more reverent there, but it still wasn't Catholicism. So Catholicism was always chirping in the background. It was
mm,
always needling me. But I trusted my family. I trusted my upbringing that they had the truth. So I'm like, well, I can't be Catholic. So
yeah.
I was just constantly seeking what is in Catholicism in the evangelical church and not finding it, and just thinking maybe I'm doing something wrong. Maybe my faith isn't strong enough. So that was always a huge challenge for me. But yeah, the door was always cracked open just a little bit for me all through my life.
Hmm. Yeah. So I guess would you say it was just kind of one of those things that you would look at as like, dang, it would be really nice if that was true and that we can bring
Mhm.
all this in, but it's not. So dang it.
Yeah.
So okay. All right. So okay, so that's really cool. So okay, I got Kevin in here in the chat. He's asking if you ever went to Day Mansion in New Jersey. So
No, we actually didn't really reenact in New Jersey. We did Vermont, New York, Pennsylvania, and Maryland. My husband's been around more with the reenacting, but me
okay.
not so much. Yeah, but no, not to that one.
That's super interesting to hear. So was this like you said it was French and Indian War reenacting, or was it like Revolutionary War or
We did French and Indian, Revolutionary War, and we did the Jacobite Rebellion too. So
okay.
we would throw a
Gotcha.
little Scotland in there occasionally.
That's that's interesting. So growing up in Oklahoma, we had Fort Washita not far from where I grew up, so we'd go and like see Civil War reenactments,
Mhm.
which is just really weird. Like being in the South and you see the Civil War being like the war that's celebrated, and it was just like, and then in all the reenactments, the South would always win, and I'd always look at my dad like, "Hey, Dad, weren't the South like weren't they for slavery? Yeah, yeah, yeah." But it's like also, didn't they lose? And he's just like, yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah,
and it was just like, okay, all right, but
I know.
yeah,
I
so
know. I was on the British side during the French and Indian and the Revolutionary War, so
oh,
yeah.
that's great. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, cool. So, all right. So you've got Catholicism kind of, itching away at the back of
Mhm.
your mind. Now, when did you start like looking into it maybe a little bit more and like start considering it as more of like I guess, like when did the investigation start or what prompted that?
Okay, this is where the story gets a little long. It started about 6 years ago now.
Okay.
Um, we we were in the Assemblies of God Church and, going through a lot of personal struggles in our life. My husband got very sick, and we had a lot of financial struggles. And during the time he was sick, it was a long-term chronic illness, very serious. And I had given birth twice in that time, and
Mm.
all of my babies were premature. So it got to a point where I had 4 children, 3 in diapers. The newest was premature. I had serious postpartum depression. My husband was sick. We had absolutely no income. And, our faith just took a huge hit. Um, we got some help, but we were going to a very small, very poor church. So there's only so much they could do. Um, but there was the Assemblies of God Church they say they don't, but I believe they do. They have prosperity gospel leanings. So
Mm.
and then, with the charismatic movement too, sometimes comes people who think they have gifts, but they actually don't. They have opinions. So we were dealing with some prophecies towards us that weren't true or were attacking specifically my
Mm.
husband. Um, because they saw me, I was the pastor's sister and I was always at church, so I was the holy one, but maybe the husband is doing wrong things on the side, and
Mm.
and that really was very hurtful. um and then there was well, maybe you don't have enough faith, maybe you're not praying enough,
Mhm.
maybe there's a secret sin you need to confess, and all these things were coming up, and we were just on this huge roller coaster of why is the Lord shutting the door? Why is this getting so hard? We almost lost our house. Um, and then there was also some other issues, like I didn't get any help for my postpartum depression because
Mm.
there were some underlying political beliefs and things too. We were
Mm.
homeschooling at the time, so there was the conspiracies that if I report my mental illness, the postpartum depression,
Mm.
I was going to lose the children. So there was a lot of fear mongering. And then the church was going through an upheaval. I won't get into that. That's too personal. But the
Mhm.
church itself was going through an upheaval, going through various ministers at the time, going through some abuses of people in the church. So
Mm.
we ended up leaving and going to a Baptist church where we
Okay.
knew a lot of homeschooling families. But while there, that's when, Baptist and Assemblies of God clash, especially in the
Hmm.
charismatic movement. And there were the Baptist church was more, I would say, casual in their beliefs, especially concerning communion and baptism. They see them as almost so symbolic that they have no meaning, really.
Mhm.
Whereas, at least in the Assemblies of God church, we believed that you had to um, at least be saved and examine your conscience. And if you ate
Mhm.
and drank unworthily, there was the potential of damnation, just as the Bible says. So we believed in those things. We believed that you only get baptized once,
Mm.
Unless you're a baptized Catholic, then you have to get rebaptized because that doesn't count. But you only get baptized. The Baptist Church was like, you can get baptized as many times as you want because it's just a symbol. So, and I couldn't agree. It got to a point in the Baptist Church where I couldn't, in good conscience, well, they say take communion, not receive. I couldn't take communion because it was so irreverent. It was almost
Mm.
an afterthought. But the other thing that was interesting was it was every time we had communion in the Baptist church, the pastor would say something against the Catholic Church. He would
Mm.
say how, oh, we don't believe that this is really the body and blood of Christ. This is just a symbol. And so then I kind of started thinking, well, all of these churches believe different things. Who's right?
Mm.
And and that's usually where everybody's journey starts. You start digging and you start
Yeah.
getting back. So I started working my way back into history, and that's
Yeah.
where my foot starts getting into that open Catholic door that I had in my life the whole time.
Now, this, if you don't have an answer right off the bat, but like, so
Mhm.
you started diving back into history, but what would you say that like your measuring stick was in determining what was truth, or how did you identify? Because I know, like, whenever I went on my journey, I was kind of just thinking to myself that I want to go with the original form of Christianity because I
Mhm.
know that Christianity didn't look like Pastor Jim's Bible church, that's in
Yeah.
an old convenience store.
Mhm.
So what was your method of identifying the truth?
Oh, I think that was a journey in and of itself.
Oh, okay.
Because I had to get over certain ideas such as sola scriptura and sola fide. But the biggest thing was I have some Catholic friends, and one of them posted something on Facebook, and I went in, all nose in the air. I think it was something about Mary, probably. Well, Catholics worship Mary or whatever, the usual. And
Right.
she took me aside in like Messenger, and she was like, "No, actually, this is what we believe." And it blew my mind. And so I was like, this is what I was told about the Catholic Church. I was told that, they worship Mary, they worship saints. And um, so I started asking some more questions and finding out that a lot of what I knew about the Catholic Church were untruths. Um, so that started me digging into what do Catholics actually believe? Because what I think they believe is obviously an error. Um, so I've discovered slowly that a lot of the objections I had to the Catholic Church were not only untrue, but their truthful answers were things that I could get behind. They made sense to me, and they actually made sense in how I had read the Bible and how I thought about the faith and how I felt about certain belief systems. So that was chipping away, but the biggest thing was I still had the idea that the Catholic Church is wrong. So
Hmm.
for me, now that I was seeing that it wasn't as wrong as I thought, but I also knew that the Catholic Church was very exacting. You have to agree to the dogmas of the faith in order to
Hmm.
be a part of the church. And I knew that it would require, like taking vows almost, um, to become, you have your first communion and to be confirmed. So I took that very seriously from the get-go, that I'm if I'm going to go into the Catholic Church, I need to agree to these dogmas. So that took a lot of time and a lot of study and a lot of prayer.
Hmm.
I can't express enough how much prayer I went through. And I would pray to the Lord. I'm like, show me the truth. Stop me where it's not true. Um, I remember the first time I prayed the rosary, I was like, Lord, if this is wrong, like I was taught, you need to stop me because I refuse to disobey you. Um, and I ended up going through the entire rosary. And I did that several times. There was one time I was like, Lord, if this is wrong, I was doing the rosary over my phone. I said,
Mm,
have somebody call me, have an interruption, like a ping, something, a
mhm.
notification pop up on my phone, and nothing happened. I mean, you could count that as a coincidence, but it was just another step, another bit of
Yeah.
sand, going down that adding up in your jar.
Mhm.
Um, so I don't know if that quite answers your question.
No,
But
it's okay.
yeah, I think just the prayer and being open to it. Once I found out that what I knew about the Catholic Church were actually lies about the Catholic Church, that really opened the door to me. Oh, and the other thing was watching a lot of The Journey Home and hearing other Baptists and Assemblies of God people have the same questions about their Baptist or Assemblies of God faith that I did. So many of them had
Hmm.
so many similar questions, and then they were answered through the Catholic Church. So that really softened my heart towards the church.
Okay. All right. So let's see here. Just to make sure that I've got it straight in my mind. Okay. So
Mhm.
you started Assemblies of God, you went Baptist, but the irreverence toward communion in the Baptist church kind of bothered you. So then you went on the journey just discovering, just to go back in history. Now,
Mhm.
going back in history, what did you consider to be like the serious contenders for like the one true church? Or was that concept of a one true church, was that what you were looking for, or
Definitely,
how
yeah.
was that? Yeah.
I believed, as the Bible said, that that Jesus started a church. And so I was like, well, that's the one true church. What is it? In the Assemblies of God Church, we were taught that it was corrupted very soon after Christ ascended. Um, so that the true church was really just these little house church pockets here and there that just kind of sort of went on in the background throughout history until Luther unlocked the door, and then they were able to start coming out. So, and I was like, that just doesn't make sense. And that's the other thing, is that if you look at even secular history and move back, it's clearly the Catholic Church. And I couldn't get beyond that. I know one of my family members asked, well, why not the Episcopalian Church? And I'm like, if I'm going to go back into time into the Episcopalian Church, I might as well take that extra step and go all the way to the Catholic Church. It became one of those anything but Catholic
Hmm.
kind of point of views. Um, but yeah, it was revealed to me pretty quickly in my journey that in history it was the Catholic Church. Um, but I struggled with what the Catholic Church may have become. So
Mm,
perhaps the Catholic Church of St. Peter is not the Catholic Church that we have today. It was,
mm,
it was corrupted by Constantine, or corrupted throughout the Middle Ages. And so what we
mm,
have now, or they just adapted so many pagan practices that it was no longer the true church, and that the true church was really just this hidden church somewhere. Um, so that was a difficult hurdle for me. But again, it just, once I dug more and more into the history, and once I dug more and more into the theology, it was chipping away at that, and I could see that the church was steady throughout history. There were ups and downs, just like
right.
anything in history, but the actual beliefs um, stayed steady.
Hmm. Okay. Well, cool. So now you said like you were worried about like what the modern Catholic Church might have become. Can you give us an example of like something that you were worried about that might be in present day Catholicism that wouldn't have been present in the time of St. Peter?
Yeah, just anything that is normally attacked. Like I wasn't sure how because St. Peter was you know, he was a contemporary of Mary. So,
Mhm.
so I was like, well, how did they worship, or not worship, of course, but this is what I thought at the time. How did they worship Mary when she's standing right there? They didn't do that. I
That has
thought, and
never
just
once
even
occurred to me.
even the opulence, I guess you could say, and like, well, they didn't have that back then. Obviously
Mhm.
there were evolutions in the church to grow and become more beautiful and more reverent for the Lord. And so with some of that, I actually had to think about it in terms of Israel's history, and
Hmm.
remembering the temple and how opulent it was, and the priesthood of the Israelites, and how that all translated into the Catholic Church that Christ established. And that began to make more sense to me. And then even some of the saints, some people have said, are actually pagan gods or pagan figures.
Mhm.
And then just digging into the history. And a lot of it was just going right to the horse's mouth, going to Catholic sources rather than Protestant sources,
Mm.
to see what the Catholics said. And one of the biggest things I noticed with Catholic apologetics and Catholic history is that they have an answer for everything. So, so where Protestants sometimes stop and say a pat answer, the Catholics have an answer that is answered through the catechism, answered through scripture, answered through tradition, answered through history, both church and secular. So it got to a point where I just could not ignore the facts.
Hmm. Okay, cool. Now, in this time, like, did Orthodoxy, like Eastern Orthodoxy or Oriental Orthodoxy, did that enter the equation at all, or did you just kind of not consider them?
No, um, I think it's because my family history is Roman Catholic,
Hmm.
and that's what's available to me here. There is an Orthodox church probably about a 30-minute drive from me, but it's
Hmm.
a very small, almost more closed community. Um, but no, I knew if I was ever going to go down the road to Rome, it was going to be
Hmm.
Rome. It
Hmm.
wasn't going to go east, which is interesting because I am Polish in my heritage, and Poland seems to be right on that edge.
Yeah.
There's some are Roman, some are Byzantine. So, but my family was Roman Catholic. And the other
Okay.
thing too was for most of my adult church history, I traveled to church, and I wanted to be local. I wanted to be as close to a parish as possible. So
Hmm.
the closest one was the Roman Catholic Church that I'm in right now.
Okay. Well, cool. All right. So you've done your investigation. You've identified. Yep. All roads are seemingly pointing to Rome here. Now, was there like a tipping point where you knew that like you had to like actually act upon this, or like what was
Yeah.
it that like spurred that on?
Well, about I would say I think it was pre-COVID.
Okay.
Um, I had gotten into an argument with a family member about the church. They had actually come over and were trying to stop me. Um, and during the argument, this family member said they're ex-Catholic too and very anti-Catholic.
Hmm.
They said that for them it came down to the Eucharist. They said that if the Eucharist is true, then all of Catholicism is true. And they determined that the Eucharist wasn't true because they take the Bible out of context, saying that it's cannibalism.
Hmm.
So the Lord said that we cannot consume blood in the Old Testament. So therefore, if Christ wouldn't contradict himself and tell us to consume his blood and body. So
Hmm.
they determined it was not true. Therefore, all of Catholicism is untrue, and they became evangelical. But unbeknownst to them, that was the the big spark for me. And I was like, okay, if I can find out if the Eucharist is true, then I have to be Catholic, because that's what this family member said. If the Eucharist is true, I have to be Catholic, whether I like it or not.
Hmm.
So I was like, okay. So I could read the verses in the Bible,
Hmm.
eat my flesh, drink my blood. So I had that, but I would pray and pray and pray.
Hmm.
And I would go and I'd sit in mass and I'd watch the consecration and I'd stare at the Eucharist. I went to adoration and just stared at the Eucharist and the monstrance and just begging God, I need to see you in the Eucharist. I don't understand this. But I need to know, because if it's true, then I can become Catholic. If it's not true, then I find something else.
Hmm.
So the huge tipping point really was I was sitting at my dining room table. I had the King James Version Bible open. I had my Douay Rheims Bible open, and I was praying. And I wasn't even asking about the Eucharist at that point. I was just praying in general.
Hmm.
And I had my eyes closed, my hands folded, and I had a vision. And in the vision, I was standing in the back of an obviously Catholic church. You have the center that goes straight up to the altar, and then the pews on the side, the pillars, more pews, and then the stained glass windows. And it was all like carved wood inside. And I've never been in a church like this.
Hmm.
And so I'm at the back of the church looking towards the altar, and beyond the altar is the high altar with the tabernacle. And I'm suddenly just like lifted and pushed forward as fast as I could go, straight up to the tabernacle. And as I approach it, Christ's face appears in front of the tabernacle. And that's when I snapped out of the vision. And I was like, wow, I think he just told me that he is in the Eucharist. So, but that was still years before I came into the church. So that vision never left me. And I did join RCIA, but this was, now we're at the time when COVID hit.
Hmm.
So I did join RCIA. I still had a lot of questions. I still had a lot of difficulty with the faith. But I was like, well, no, let's start working towards this. Let's start. But unfortunately, RCIA was almost non-existent. We were basically
Hmm.
mailed the books and told to read them ourselves. If we had any questions, contact the RCIA director. There was no
Yeesh.
formation. It was so bad. Um, and I had the issue with my husband is baptized Catholic too, and we were married outside the church. So we needed a ratification or a convalidation, and I wasn't
Hmm.
getting any answers at the time. Everything was just so shut down from COVID that, and it was getting closer. We were now coming closer to, we were in Lent. No, this was before Lent. This was just before Lent. Um, but I'm like, we're so close to the Easter Vigil, and yet I have nothing. I haven't spoken to a priest. I
Hmm.
haven't discussed my need for a convalidation or a ratification. At the time, it would have been a ratification. My husband didn't want anything to do with it.
Hmm.
So that would have involved more through the diocese. And so I basically just gave up. I was like, it's not
Hmm.
working out. I can't go to mass. I can't speak to anybody. I'm not getting any answers. I'm not getting any help. Um, so I was like, we're stuck at home anyway. I'm just gonna stay home. I'm done. I told the Lord, I said, I feel like I'm going to be Catholic someday, but I'm probably gonna have to wait years and years and years. I'll have to wait
Hmm.
until, maybe some of my more strong feeling family members, maybe I have to wait till they pass away, because it would be too hurtful for them for me to join.
Hmm.
It was too much on my shoulders at the time. So yeah, I gave up. But
Yeah.
that's how I know
Wow.
myself. Yeah.
God bless you. That is that's really rough.
Hmm.
Now, obviously, the story doesn't end there.
No.
So, that something must have happened in this, I guess, this kind of like this spiritual doldrum,
Mm.
that kind of like spurred you on to pick it up again. So what happened there?
I started to miss mass very much.
Oh.
And I was on a little bit of a roller coaster with apologetics too. So for a while I was
Hmm.
just like, I'm not gonna listen to anybody. But then, I stuff starts showing up. About this time is when Pints of Aquinas started showing up.
Yep.
Um, so I started listening to Pints with Aquinas. I started studying a little more again, but still, it was just this. So now we're into, I would say, January of 2022. We're
Okay.
here now. So, but I'm missing mass a lot. And so finally, right before Easter of 2022, a friend of mine said, "Oh, my parish is putting together a children's choir. Maybe one or two of your children would like to join it. We'd really like to have you back." So, I started attending that parish, and it's a sister parish in my city. And that was nice. We were in the choir for a little bit. uh, excuse me. And it's a very friendly church. It's a little more I I don't want to say irreverent because it's not irreverent, but it's a little more laid back. It's not as traditional. So and my children enjoyed that. It didn't feel so foreign to them. Um, so we were going there for a little while. And I started to, I was like, you know what? I'm doing this again. I'm coming in. I'm going on the roller coaster again. I said, I'm done with the roller coaster. It's time. I have to take that step of faith and join the church. But I was going, I rejoined RCIA.
Hmm.
Um, but I was going again through not being able to speak with a priest. And that was getting me discouraged. Um, but I was like, no, it's time. I have to do this. And looking back, I realized that I think perhaps um, God stopped the priests. He put up a block. So
Hmm.
I know when I tell the story, I don't want people to think poorly of the priesthood or the priest that I encountered. Um, Because number one, in my city, they're extremely busy. They usually take care of multiple parishes.
Mm-hmm.
One of the priests takes care of a school. The other one oversees the entire area, which is a huge geographical rural area, and he oversees all of the parishes in that area. So they're obviously very busy, but I really think that God blocked the priests from um, having the opportunity to speak to me or whatever he did, because I think he was humbling me. He was working on me, because I had this idea that I wanted to stand out. I wanted the priests to notice me.
Hmm.
I wanted, you know, I would get angry because, like Scott Hahn's story,
Mm-hmm.
he had all of these people. He had priests and bishops and cardinals and
Mm-hmm.
monsignors and um, professors all rally around him as he was coming into conversion. And
Mm-hmm.
I kind of wanted that. I'm like, why does he get all that? And I get nothing. And one of the things I remember, just as I was just beginning my conversion, I remember telling some of my Catholic friends I'd be a great Catholic. And they're like, yeah, you would. And I was like, no, I'd be a great Catholic. And so I think the Lord had to take me down a few pegs. So, yeah. And so, like, when I started the apologetics, I was ready to argue with anybody. I could parrot back all of the answers.
Yep.
I was like, look how smart I am. I'm smarter than all these other Catholics. And So I really think God had to knock me down some. And it ended up being, you don't need the facts. I don't need to have proof of every single thing in the Catholic
Hmm.
Church. What I need was to be humble and to obey. And that's what it started coming down to. Is I got to a point, I got to such a low point in knowing in my conscience that I had to become Catholic, but that I had to do it in complete obedience to Christ, and to stop trying to do it through my own merits.
Mm.
So now, part of that was, I was going to come in, I was going to obey our CIA. I was going to do everything, even if people are saying, you could skip it, you could do this, you could do that. I was like, yeah, or you deserve to skip it. I was like, no, 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 I'm gonna go through our CIA.
Mm.
So I joined it, and I actually really enjoyed it. Um,
Mm.
but just as I was starting our CIA, I had some time conflicts with my parish. So I was attending mass at the first parish I started going to, um, in early in my conversion, and I just felt this overwhelming sense of, this is where you belong. So, and they had just gotten a new priest. I didn't know anything about him. So it wasn't, celebrity priest led. I was like, oh, I
Hmm.
like this priest. I'm going to come here. And I was like, no, I just felt this overwhelming sense that this was my home. And I contacted my RCIA director, and I asked her, I'm like, how hard is it to change membership? And she says, oh, it's just a piece of paper. So I was like, okay, I'm changing to my current parish. And she said, okay. So she contacted the priest, and the priest said, I want to see her right away. So I made arrangements. Another friend invited me to a Thursday adoration and mass, and I went there. And that's when I met my current priest, and that was the beginning of me actually being launched into the church.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, I know on locals, like you've told quite a few stories of your current priest, like to
Mhm.
the point where it's just like, man, I really want to buy that man a beer. But yeah, so I guess okay. So you mentioned though the obedience to the RCIA program,
Mhm.
and I've heard it. It's a pretty common story that people are usually kind of, especially those who have studied prior to starting RCIA, are usually kind of disappointed in it. But I know that oh, what is it? One thing that I think that's really important to get out of RCIA, even if you quote unquote, know all the answers, is that like it's almost like when you're dating or being, about getting married, is that you kind of got to see how you react when you're bored.
Mhm.
It's not just about the learning, it's about developing the relationship. So I think that was really, uh, really wise, really profound that you were saying this, like you wanted to be obedient to the RCIA program. Now, so at your current parish, was that a little easier than it was during your first time around with RCIA?
Yeah, well, definitely just being able to be in person, and the RCIA director in our parish. Well, it's actually it. She takes care of RCIA for all four parishes in my city, um, and she's lovely. She's a convert herself, and she's absolutely lovely, and she is on fire for the Catholic faith. So, unfortunately, her hands were tied during COVID. So, she was there whenever I had questions, but it's not the same. We were in person this time. There were only three of us in the class. So, um, and yeah, it was. And she told me, she goes, I know this is kind of rudimentary for you, but I did get stuff out of it. I did get, I liked Catholic perspectives on familiar Bible stories, and familiar catechesis, where the
Mhm.
evangelical church and the Catholic Church meld. Um, so, and then I love talking about the faith. So that was I enjoyed going there and just being able to talk about the faith, because I don't really get a chance to really talk about it. to other people, which is probably why I'm so active on Pines. Um, so, but the interesting thing was the first meeting I had with my priest. He chatted with me and asked me my story, and I told him. And then he said, he goes, "I don't think you need to go through our CIA. You are excused from it." And I was like, "Well, wow, okay." I mean,
Nice.
it's interesting because that's what I wanted. I wanted to be the elite person who didn't need to go through our
Mm-hmm.
CIA. And here I was when I humbled myself and was willing to obey. Um, I was excused. Now, and I didn't get a big head about it. Praise the Lord. I was really humbled by that and challenged, and I actually did continue going because I just enjoy discussing the faith. So I went to one or two more, and then I started having scheduling conflicts. The one was during my first confession. So obviously, I'm
Mm.
going to my first confession, not to RCIA. And then the
Mm-hmm.
recent one was my wedding anniversary. So I missed that one. And then even my dear priest goes, he's like, why are you still going? I'm like, because I like it, So, and I'm still learning, so yeah, and then plus I have my confirmation coming up, and I know almost nothing about confirmation. So obviously I'll go to the RCIA classes to prepare for that.
Mm. Okay. So you're not. You said you're not quite confirmed yet,
No.
or oh, okay, gotcha.
No, no,
So,
I've had my marriage convalidation, I've had my first confession, and I've had my first communion. But
okay,
I'll be confirmed in May.
okay, all right, interesting. Or is it waiting for a bishop, or
Yes.
is it just
Yeah.
okay? Oh, okay, that's
Yeah,
really cool.
there was the option of possibly my priest confirming me
Hmm.
without the bishop, but just for the sake of ease and
Yeah,
tradition and whatever. So we
yeah.
agreed to just wait till May.
That's fun because we've our priest likes to do that same thing because he's like obviously like he's like I can confirm you, but I prefer to have the archbishop do it or one of the
Hmm.
auxiliary bishops.
Hmm.
So but like so with for a friend of mine who recently came into the church, or came back to the church. He's a 40-something-year-old man, and here he is getting confirmed, and like he's standing head and shoulders above everybody because everybody's like 12 years old or whatever, and
Yeah.
and he's like the same size as me,
Uh-huh.
and it was kind of funny seeing that.
Hmm.
I told the guy that's like, hey, this is just like a humbling experience to basically say that like you're basically a 12-year-old kid,
Hmm.
and like that's where your maturity level is at in the faith right now, is that of like a 12-year-old kid, which
Hmm.
isn't a bad thing, but
No.
like just keep that in mind whenever it comes to your growth.
Hmm.
So but
Yes, the
but yeah.
Catholic Church is very good at humbling a person.
Yeah.
I am
you know,
continually, every day, humbled. So,
oh man, we've got a French priest at our church, and it's really funny because occasionally he'll do a sermon and he'll open it up with no sermon today. We're just gonna go over some basics because like y'all don't know how to act in church apparently.
mm,
And of course, he's
yeah,
saying in a snooty French accent, but
yeah.
he
That's funny.
but occasionally I'll get so inflated in my ego, and I was like, oh, I know quite of the basics. I've read Catholicism for Dummies,
Uh-huh.
so obviously I'm an expert. But
Mhm,
then like he'll go over his basic stuff, and he's like, children should know this,
mhm.
and he's going over that, and some of it's new to me, and I'm just like, oh, oh,
Uh-huh.
I'm stupid. Oh
Uh-huh.
goodness. I'm so sorry,
Yeah.
and it just kind of reminds me of another thing that struck me whenever you were talking about how you were humbled is that, when we pray for humility, God
Mm.
doesn't just magically like increase our humility. He
Oh, yeah, yeah.
humiliates us and
Uh-huh.
gives us opportunities to
Yes.
be humble. And the
Yes.
same with patience.
Yes.
And so, whenever all these like awful things happen, it's just like, well, this just means that God is sanctifying me one terrible experience at a time.
Yeah, exactly.
So, But yeah. So I don't know how much time you got left, but if you have time and if you don't want to go into it, that's fine. But like, how are things going now that you've at least, I mean, you were brought into the church as a baby, but now that you've taken another step along the lines of initiation, like how's the family taking this? Are things going well, or are you still like experiencing some opposition?
Um, well, right now, currently, almost all of my extended family does not know that I'm Catholic. So
Okay.
I haven't spilled the beans yet.
Okay.
Part of it is the opportunity hasn't arisen yet. There were a few times I thought I would, but then there were somebody might have gotten sick or there might have been a little difficulty. Or it was around the holidays and I didn't want to just, explode the holidays.
Yeah.
So my youngest son is going to be baptized and receive his first communion
Oh
on
wow.
Easter Vigil. So that I'm going to have to. I figure I'll use that as the opportunity to um, tell my extended family
Gotcha.
because obviously they ought to be invited, even if they are completely opposed to it and will not attend. I believe that they should at least be invited and be aware of
Yeah.
it. So, my immediate family, they're supportive. My husband is supportive.
Okay.
He's putting up with me practically living at the church now. So, it's to the point where some of the people in the church have teased me saying, why don't you just install a bed and move in? So I'm there. I was there, let's say I was there Saturday, I was there Sunday. And this isn't just mass, this is just like volunteer
Mhm.
work things too.
Yep.
I was there today. I'll be there tomorrow morning to do more sewing and things. So and then obviously Wednesday, singing part of the cantering for Ash Wednesday. And I'll be there twice. I'll be there in the morning to receive my ashes, and I'll be there in the evening to canter.
Nice.
Uh, so they're supportive. So
Nice.
it's
Okay.
yeah, I think they're having fun seeing mom have fun.
Gotcha. Well, that's
Yeah.
really cool. So, okay, so your youngest is being brought into the church. Are the other 3, are they over there just kinda like, "Well, we're not so sure about this."
Yeah, they're not so sure. My um, second son, he attends with me. So the two youngest come with me to mass,
Okay.
and they're both in faith formation. But he's not really into it. My youngest though is. My youngest was Catholic before I even started converting to Catholicism.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, he's always had like a profound spirituality about him. And
Huh.
I remember I would took them to their great great grandmother's grave, and I had my back to the gravestone, and I was telling the children some stories about great grandma and visiting her. And I turn around, and there's my youngest kneeling at the graves, praying for his great great grandmother's soul. And I was like, then that was at the time when, that you can't do that in the evangelical church. That's wrong. So that's not anything I had ever taught him. And he was just doing it on his own. So I kind of nudged my priest a little, saying, maybe this one might have a calling to the priesthood. So
Yeah.
yeah, so my priest is he's taken my youngest under his wing a bit. So
Nice. Nice. Okay, that'll be fun calling your son father one day.
yeah, so that'll
Um,
be great.
yeah, so we got a few questions here in the
Mhm.
chat. So Father John Brown, who is an amazing priest, if you ever get a chance to talk to him, like definitely jump at the opportunity. But he's wanting to know, what are some of your favorite YouTube channels?
Oh, well, I'm doing the catechism in a year with Father Mike Schmitz. Um, I'm kind of all over the place. I kind of dabble here and there. Um, for a while, it was called to communion. I would listen to them religiously
Hmm.
during my conversion. Like right now, um, what else I've done Sensus Fidelium. Um, oh gee, they're eluding me right now. Obviously, Pints with Aquinas. Um, a lot of times just whatever shows up in my feed.
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
Yeah, I usually like the standard show like EWTN. I have Sirius XM. It came free with my lease, so
Oh, fair enough.
I listen to the Catholic channel on Sirius XM. Um, yeah, I go back and forth. I can't really say other than like right now, Pints is a huge one.
Yeah.
Pints usually covers pretty much anything and everything you'd
Oh
want.
yeah. I,
So
I really enjoy listening to him
yeah,
too, and I'm looking forward to like going to Steubenville next week.
yeah,
So I know you're not going to be able to make it, and I'm kind of just rubbing it
no,
in at this point, but
yeah, I
I'm
know.
excited. But Harrison's in the chat. He's asking, when you were a Protestant, who were some of your favorite theologians?
Um, None really. We didn't. uh, some of the more fundamentalist, and I dabbled in the fundamentalist movement in my young married years. And that was actually very damaging, but I don't really need to get into that.
Yeah.
But so there was like R.C. Sproul and Moody and all that. And I didn't really know who they were. They would show up
Hmm.
in the culture, but I didn't read them. I didn't know who they were. Um, Growing up, it was more the televangelist of the year. So it was like Benny Hinn, the 700 Club. And even then, I didn't really pay attention other than we would laugh at Benny Hinn knocking people over. So,
Yeah.
because being slain in the spirit, we're like, oh, there's another one down.
Yeah.
Um, so no, there really wasn't any theology really
Hmm.
in my Protestant growing up. Um,
Interesting.
yeah,
Okay.
it wasn't
Yeah.
even really apologetics. It was just stuff I kind of just picked up along the way, and yeah, but nothing really concrete.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we're moving on to the next question. Haley's asking, what are you reading right now?
I'm awful. I start books, never finish them. So I have a huge pile. I have, let's see, the Deliverance Prayers, that book from Father Ripperger I've been going through.
Mm.
Um, I just got a book on Mary. Oh, I have a Saint Joseph prayer book. Um, yeah, I'm kind of all over the place right now. I'm doing a program at my parish for people who are curious about the Catholic Church but not ready to join RCIA. So
Hmm.
I have like a slew of books laid out right now to study and prepare for any questions people might have. So nothing
Okay.
super specific right now.
Okay. I just want you to know that I've been asking for questions on a live show since I started this thing, and you were the first person to actually get questions.
Oh
So,
wow, really?
so
Ask
yes, I'm not
away.
kidding. So Mel is in the chat asking, what's the painting behind you?
This is okay. Yeah, let's see if I can tip it. Okay. I picked this up at a yard sale for $10.
Nice.
So it's yeah, I thought it was just such a serene, beautiful painting and it filled this blank wall. My bedroom isn't big. It's actually the second bedroom in the house because we only have a 2-bedroom house and we have 4 kids. So my husband and I were wadded into this 7 foot by 9 foot room. So, but there
Oh
was this
wow.
blank wall and yeah, so I put that up there just
Nice.
to have a little
That
interest.
oh also I just caught the rest of your hoodie. It's a offer it up buttercup. That is
Offered up
beautiful.
buttercup.
Where did you get that?
Colby's Little Flower, I think it's called. She has an Etsy shop. I follow her
Oh,
on
okay.
Instagram. Yeah.
That is hilarious. I think everybody's gonna be getting those from me for Christmas this year.
Yeah.
Uh, okay. Kevin's actually got like a really good question here that's a little bit
Mhm.
heavier. So
Oh, good. I like
he's
these.
he said, I heard your statement about the vision that you experienced, but what weight would you give to that experience? Was that vision responsible for 99% of your reversion, 50%? And then follow up is, and if it's not 100%, what did the rest of the heavy lifting?
Oh, good question. The vision for me, like I haven't really sought like I've told my priest about it, I believe. I think I did. Um but I haven't really like sat down with a spiritual director and went over the vision to check the validity of it. But I'm pretty confident that it was of the Lord. I know I did mention it to one family member, and they they thought I was dreaming, like a sleep dreaming, and I'm like, no, I
Mm.
was awake when this happened. I was sitting at my dining room table, so it was definitely a vision, and it was very, very, very clear. All the
Mm.
detail, all the feeling, everything. So I do believe it was a vision from the Lord. Um, and the weight towards my conversion, it was a pretty heavy weight, I think, because I still come back to it.
Mm.
Um, I think one thing we didn't quite cover was my actual stepping into the faith. Um,
Mm.
like that the my my confession and my first communion. Um, one thing, like, I think it helped me, like, all right, let's go back to his question. So it was a heavy weight because that was the clincher for me. It was like, if the Eucharist is true, it's time to walk into the church. So that was a
Mm.
pretty heavy weight. Um, and the rest of it was really just, it was no longer all of the apologetics and the facts. It came down to obedience, my conscience, all the prayer I was doing. And then I got to a point where I knew that I had to obey where Christ was leading me.
Mm.
Um, and then I was still struggling, even though I had that vision, and I would keep going back. And I'm like, well, I had this vision, so the Eucharist is true. But I still didn't have that interior belief. I don't exactly know how to explain it. But I will say that when I received the Eucharist for the first time, I finally believed. The grace
Mm.
was given to me to believe not just the Eucharist, without a
Mm.
doubt, but all of Catholicism. So any of the struggles I had, anything with, like even contraception or whatever, it disappeared. And
Wow.
I have this beautiful grace of just believing the Catholic faith.
Wow. That's beautiful. That's amazing. So,
Yeah, I'm
and
really grateful. Yeah.
this no, it's this, and it feels really awkward here because I have no idea how to like transition to the next question because I've
Okay,
never had
go
this
ahead.
situation before.
Go ahead.
But
Throw it at me.
Chris Easley is asking if you have any devotion to a specific saint.
Oh, I love the Saints. Oddly enough, because of my name, people think that my patron saint will be Tekakwitha, or that she is special to me in a very subtle way. She's not really in the forefront for me, but she's there. But my patron saint for my confirmation saint is Saint Catherine of Genoa.
Hmm.
Um, I was My name, Kateri, means Catherine.
Right.
It's the Mohawk Indian for Catherine. So I was like, and Catherine just stuck with me. And I'm like, I think my patron saint's name is Catherine. So of course people go automatically to Catherine of Siena. And I looked up Catherine of Siena. I was like, no, I don't think that's it. And so I started typing in um, patron saints of I went with difficult marriages, but it was more because my husband and I aren't, equally yoked in our beliefs right now. So
Hmm.
I wanted a saint along those lines, and she came up, and I'm like, "Oh, here's a Catherine. Let me read about her." And I just knew that this is my patron saint. Saint Joseph, definitely, he's a biggie right now. Let's see. He's not a saint yet, but I hope he will be soon. Archbishop Fulton Sheen.
Hmm.
I believe he is a saint, but the church hasn't given him the sainthood yet. Um, let's see. Saint Monica, Saint Gianna,
Mm.
Saint Maria Goretti. So yeah, I've got quite a list.
Nice. Okay. Well then, that kind of wraps it up for the comments. So I have one final question here,
Mhm.
and it's For the 21 who are currently watching and everybody else is going to watch in the future, what's the best way that we can pray for you?
Oh, let's see. Right now, I need a lot of strength. I have 2 in public school, 2 homeschool. Um, I clean houses and I run a family business on the side. We do tree care. So, and sometimes I work in the field, so that's very exhausting. Um, I take care of the household, the primary caregiver of the children. My husband's an extremely hard worker. He usually works 6, sometimes 7 days a week. So, obviously the home care defaults to me. Um, and in my launch into the church, I've been hugely blessed with several ministries already. I do the altar cloths. I am now cantering with a small Gregorian choir. And that's another thing. I'm thrust
Yeah.
into Gregorian chant. I've never Gregorian chanted before, and I'm learning Gregorian chants at lightning speed. Like within days, like in 2 days, I'm learning like several new chants. Um, and this program that my parish is doing about my conversion and people who are curious about the faith. So, and I don't want to give any of it up. I love it.
Nice.
I am so very, very happy, but I'm also very tired. So I need, and I have a few chronic illness issues too. So just I'm really asking for strength, and also the strength that it is a heavy weight to bear for not telling my family yet, and knowing that the reaction is likely going to be very negative. And that's very hard. We've always been unified as a family in our faith, and now there's division, and it's very sad and very difficult for me.
Okay. Well, absolutely then. So for all of you who stuck around this long, please pray for strength for Katie. And my name is Kyle Whittington. Thanks for watching, and God bless.
Thank you for
And
having
let's
me.